How about the other one, the DOJ telling the Treasury Department that it must turn over Trump's taxes to the House Ways and Means Committee? How big of a deal is this for Congress and its investigative efforts? I mean, what can Trump's tax returns tell Congress that is still of consequence today?
So I'm very pleased that the Department of Justice simply read the law. It's black and white, and the law says that the U.S. Congress gets to have the tax return. And I'm pleased they're going to enforce it. So Congress will get the tax returns of the former president, and the House Ways and Means Committee will review that. And I look forward to seeing what they say about what the tax returns show of the former president.
OK, but the next 72 hours could be pretty interesting because Trump and his lawyers have until Wednesday to respond to the DOJ order. Do you expect a legal challenge from Team Trump? I mean, most legal analysts have said on this broadcast and elsewhere that Trump would not win, even if he does this. So ultimately, how long do you think it might take until lawmakers actually get their hands on Trump's tax returns?
The former president has filed numerous frivolous lawsuits during his career, whether in the private sector or public sector. I fully expect him to file another frivolous lawsuit, but he's not going to win, and we're going to get his tax return.
You think it'll be a while, though, till you get him?
It might be a while, but it's not going to be a huge amount of time because we have a Department of Justice that is not being controlled by the former Bill Barr. I also do want to note that you bring up a very good point. We do have to change the law and expedite litigation that is consequential to our democracy, such as litigation against the president. And so I am going to be introducing a bill that says for any issues related where the president has a financial interest, or if it's related to a sexual assault or a sexual harassment issue, then that kind of case needs to be expedited by our courts.
OK. But this could not be retroactive, or could it be, in your mind, that which you would be introducing?
It would not be retroactive.
OK. Can I ask what you hope to learn from Trump's taxes?
So there are many things we could learn. We could see if there's any evidence of any sort of foreign influence. We could see actually how much he makes, because he has repeatedly, according to public media reports, exaggerated how much he actually has made or has in his assets and so on. We could see if he could have been leveraged by any entities, whether domestic or international. There's a lot that we can learn from his tax returns.
OK. In terms of money that we do have confirmed, this is according to the Washington Post, Donald Trump has more than $100 million right now in political cash. This just after the first 6 months of this year. What does this say to you that the former president remains the Republican Party's most dominant fundraiser while persistently and falsely claiming that the election was stolen from him? I mean, aside from his obvious lies, should this concern Democrats, the amount of money that his lies continue to attract?
The base of the Republican Party has moved so far right that it's now unrecognizable to many people, including many former Republicans who are now never Trumpers. And you see this base that not only believes in a big lie, they also downplay the insurrection. They're opposed to middle-class tax cuts to families with children. This is a very radical Republican base, and it doesn't surprise me that they're going to give money to the former president who had all sorts of crazy and insane ideas.
So you have the 1-6 panel right now. It is optimistic it's going to hear testimony, in fact, from former Trump officials, because the DOJ said it's not going to block any of them from testifying. So who do you think should be subpoenaed? Who do you think is most important to hear from? And what do you think the chances are that it happens?
I thought the January 6th Select Committee did a great job highlighting their assault on police officers by supporters of the former president. When I was a House impeachment manager, something we could never quite figure out is why did it take the former president so long to order in a National Guard after everyone was watching on TV, including him, the assault on our Capitol? So I think they should ask that question and try to figure out what witnesses knew about what the former president was saying, what he was thinking in his mind. And there's only a certain number of people he talked to during those critical hours, such as his chief of staff, as well as Kevin McCarthy, and Jim Jordan has also appeared to have said that he talked to the former president that day as well.
So very quickly, you would not be opposed to subpoenaing Republican lawmakers, any lawmakers, but they would only be Republicans, with whom the president spoke that day? I mean, that would be unprecedented.
I think their committee should follow the facts wherever it leads them. Of course, that decision will be up to the committee, but I don't think there'd be any principal objection to it from the Democratic caucus.